welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news. You stay with us. We begin in Ecuador, where protests against the government of President Lenin Moreno continue into the night across the country. Demonstrations against International Monetary Fund sponsored austerity measures announced by Lenin Moreno last Thursday have been ongoing throughout the day in the capital, Quito, and many people are continuing to arrive in the city ahead of this Wednesday's anticipated general strike. A conservative estimate of around 20,000 people from Indigenous community have been marching on the city in rejection of the measures. And thousands of Indigenous protesters broke into the National Assembly building this Tuesday. This is a video of them inside the chamber, as we reported earlier in the day. The demonstrators had been trying to storm the building for the last few hours as part of their protest against President Lenin Moreno's austerity package. This is the sixth day, this was already day of protest against the government's measures, which include a sharp rise in fuel prices. Indigenous marches from the northern of the central highland region have converged on the capital, where they have been joined by students, trade unions, social movements, and ordinary citizens angry at these economic measures. And during the takeover of the National Assembly, police heavily repressed protesters. As we can see in this video, paramedics are trying to take care of the critically injured. The government has now declared a curfew in the vicinity of official buildings from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. And earlier this Tuesday, Ecuadorian police raided an opposition radio station in the capital, Quito. Radio Pichincha Universal is owned by the opposition-run prefecture of Pichincha province and has been providing extensive coverage of the protests. The police removed the radio's equipment and it has now gone off the air. The government has cited its power under the state of exception to justify closing the station. Protests have been ongoing since last Thursday. In light of the mobilizations, President Lenin Moreno moved the government to Guayaquil. State institutions suspended mass activities on Tuesday as the schools remain closed for a fourth day. The authorities announced that 570 people have been detained so far, and social media continues to be flooded with images of police brutality. Indigenous marchers from the northern highlands got a very different reception when they reached the low-income neighborhood of Calderón in the north of Quito. They were cheered by local residents who had collected food and other supplies for them. And after the repression in the center of the city, the indigenous protesters from the south were also given a meal by social movements who turned out to welcome them. And the Ecuadorian government, now based in the coastal city of Guayaquil, after the president abandoned the capital, Quito, has declared a curfew in the vicinity of official buildings from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. a.m., as we were saying. Our correspondent in Guayaquil, our companion, our mate, Carla Gonzalez, is in Guayaquil province and has the details for us. Welcome, Carla. Please update us.
We are outside the governorship of Guayas, which is the representation of the national government in the city of Guayaquil. We see that is guarded by policemen. During this afternoon, the president, Lenin Moreno, announced a new decree, a new national decree, official decree by the government, which orders a restriction of movement for people who are close to buildings that are key for the government and for the Ecuadorian state. This will go from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. the next day. We are also expecting several protests today and tomorrow because the government has announced the local government here in Guayaquil has announced a march, a protest to reject the march that has arrived in Guayaquil as well. The Indigenous march, which took over several cities in the country, has now arrived to the main port, and the mayor, Cynthia Viteri, has announced that they will go on strike against these measures. We remember also that the government of Lenín Moreno announced they will not back out. They will continue to impose these measures, the austerity measures imposed by the IMF in Ecuador. And of course, we are also expecting more information from the indigenous marches that are going on around the country.
Thank you, Carla. We continue with our information because Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro responded to the accusations made by his Ecuadorian counterpart.
The International Monetary Fund wants to impose its exclusive, poverty-generating model in Latin America, its oligarchic model that benefits capital, the multimillionaires, and leaves the people behind. That's why the people of Ecuador are on the streets, not because of Maduro. It's about survival. It's about resistance. It's rejection of the International Monetary Fund. That's why the people of Ecuador are on the streets.
The Venezuelan president also shared his concern over Moreno's recent decisions, offering a way to resolve the current situation.
I saw Lenín Moreno on TV, out of reality, totally out of place, surrounded by advisors who tell him, no, you're a great president, you're doing it very well, go ahead, you truly are a brave president. Brave to take away the benefits and social rights of people? Brave to betray his people? Brave to surrender to the International Monetary Fund? If Lenín Moreno wants to see reality, he must withdraw this economic package and speak with the people of Ecuador, hold a dialogue with the campesinos, with the workers, and with the indigenous communities.
And now we move on from topic. In Colombia, former President Álvaro Uribe Vélez is being questioned by the Supreme Court over alleged witness tampering. Protesters gather outside the court ahead of the hearing. They say Uribe, as a senator and an official head of the governing party, is partly responsible for the murder of hundreds of community leaders and former FARC guerrillas. The case against the former president has to do with his alleged involvement with right-wing paramilitaries.
I never thought that frankly defending honor in my love for Colombia, with respect for citizens, and in accordance with the Constitution, would create these judicial difficulties for me.
Time for a very short break. You stay tuned with us. Remember, you can follow us on our media, social media. On Twitter, you find us as @TelesurEnglish, and on my account @LauraPTelesur. You stay with us. Back with our news, U.S. auto giant General Motors is temporarily laying off another 446 workers in Mexico because of the strike by its workers in the United States. Last week, General Motors suspended 6,000 workers at its Silao assembly and transmission plant in Guanajuato, in central Mexico. The latest layoffs are at its engine plant in Ramon Arizpe. 48,000 members of the United Auto Workers Union went on strike across the United States on September 16th. Talks with management are said to be deadlocked. And our correspondent in Mexico City, Eduardo Martinez, has the details for us about this strike. Welcome, Eduardo.
According to the latest update, about 446 General Motors workers in Mexico have been fired as a result of a strike by workers from the same company in the United States, which has been going on for a month by now. The majority of workers are deployed at the company's Ramos Arizpe factory in the north of Mexico. GM previously laid off 6,000 workers in Mexico at a separate facility in Silao, Mexico. At the end of September, the company announced that a good portion of the workers in Mexico are obliged to take out vacations, and they will only receive 55% of their salaries during this time. The GM strike in the U.S. affects about 6,000 GM workers in Mexico. Car components make up one of the biggest portions of Mexico's export market. The Mexican government hasn't taken address the worker situation so far.
Thank you, Eduardo. Now we move on to Honduras, where this Tuesday the opposition branch of the Freedom of Refundation Party presented the legislature on the application for a political trial against President Juan Orlando Hernandez for alleged links with drug trafficking. The proposed application of this measure originates from the latest statements on Honduran drug traffickers before United States courts, which have involved Hernandez. In the face of these accusations, various social and political sectors have demanded the immediate resignation of the president in order to allow for elections as a democratic solution. They have also stated that people could rise up to express their indignation in the near future. Let us remember that the trial of Tony Hernandez, brother of the current president of the Central American country, Juan Orlando Hernandez, is still going on in United States courts. He is accused of large-scale drug and arms trafficking, among other crimes. And in Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has stressed that small island developing states or SIDS are under immediate threat of climate change. He made the comment while giving the keynote address at the GCF Private Investment for Climate Conference in South Korea on Monday. Prime Minister Holness made a clear point that more must be done in order to tackle the crisis.
Climate-related shocks, whether sharp and swift hurricanes or lingering and debilitating droughts, have a long-term effect, particularly on the economic growth trajectory and public debt of small island developing states and less developed countries. The problem is compounded by the fact, as you all know, that small island developing states, notwithstanding that by virtue of size, we are the least cause of the problem, but by virtue of our geography, we are among the most vulnerable countries to the effects of climate change. But we are also, by virtue of the state of development of our economy and public institutions, we are amongst the least able to respond.
Guyana's President David Granger says the protection of indigenous land, languages and other rights remains a priority of his government. Granger issued the assurance while addressing over 200 villages leaders at the opening of the National Tachos Council. The council is the highest representative body for indigenous people. There are 9 indigenous nations that settle across the 10 administrative regions in Guyana. President Granger urged Tachos village leaders to set aside their differences and come together to reduce some of the social problems threatening their communities.
Work together to reduce the incidence of alcoholism, incest, murder, non-communicable diseases, people trafficking, prostitution, substance abuse, teenage pregnancy and suicide in certain communities. Antisocial behavior undermines the cultural fabric of communities and lowers everyone's quality of life.
And in Brazil, large bloods of oil strain more than 130 beaches, which have affected all 9 states of the northeastern part of the country, a poor region known for the beauty of its beaches. Up to this moment, it has been removed more than 100 tons of oil from the beaches in northern Brazil. The patches started to appear in early September. However, President Macron's recent measure was to assert that the large bloods of oil came from outside the country and order a swift investigation due to possible environmental crime. And in the United States, the government has ordered the ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, not to testify before congressional committees on the political trial inquiry of President Donald Trump. Ambassador Gordon Sondland's defense team said that the diplomat complied with the president's order. He said he did not testify before congressional committees investigating Trump's alleged pressure on the Ukrainian investigation into the businesses of Democratic Party presidential candidate Joe Biden ahead of the 2020 presidential elections. And we still talk about the United States because LGBTQ activists have gathered outside the Supreme Court as it weighs on a case about the rights of gay and transgender workers. The Supreme Court has to rule on whether gay and transgender workers are protected under anti-discrimination laws, an issue which has caused deep divisions within United States society. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act forbids employers from discriminating against employees on the basis of sex as well as race, color, national origin, and religion.
And all we are asking the court to do is to recognize that transgender people have the same rights under our civil rights laws as everybody else, not to be discriminated against because of their sex.
Our federal law prohibiting discrimination because of sex, Title VII, is a promise that women will not be treated worse than men and men will not be treated worse than women. The law's text does not mean that employers must treat biological men as women. The ACLU's attempt to redefine sex creates unfair situations for women and girls and undermines nearly 50 years of advances for women.
Time for a second and very short break. You stay tuned with us.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, and more. Real life. Fridays, only on Tourist World.
We are back with the news. Israel imposed a total blockade on Palestinians from West Bank, Gaza Strip and Jerusalem on the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. The blockade prevented Palestinians access all over all the crossing, which leads to the occupied West Bank. In turn, the Muslim population was unable to enter mosque in Jerusalem to pray. During the day, Palestinian media reported that the army of Tel Aviv supported the entry of 200 Israeli settlers to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is the third most holy place in Islam, and as the other occasions would have been discredited by Israeli intruders. We talk about Africa. The Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa is in Uganda to join up with his counterpart Yoweri Museveni during the country's 57th Independence Day celebrations. Mnangagwa was received at the Entebbe Airport, 41 kilometers from the capital Kampala, by the Ugandan Minister of Foreign Affairs Sam Kutesa, the Zimbabwean ambassador to Kenya and Uganda Wimpeg Moyo, and Chief Director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade Ambassador Lovemore Masemo. President Museveni will host President Mnangagwa at the State House in Entebbe, where the two countries are also set to sign bilateral agreements. He was honored with 21 gun salute before inspecting a guard of honor of the Uganda People's Defense Forces at the Ugandan police.
The Excellencies called for the immediate lifting of the long-standing economic sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe.
Currently, it is true, Zimbabwe has survived up to date because we have focused on our own domestic resources. For the last 20 years, we have never received lines of credit. Whatever we have in Zimbabwe is on the basis of our own domestic resources, plus both political and material support from our sister countries on the continent.
We observe that there is a huge potential for cooperation between Uganda and Zimbabwe, especially in areas of agriculture, agro-processing, tourism, mining, health, trade and investment, education and air services.
Search operations continue for 17 missing African migrants a day after the bodies of 13 old women were recovered following the latest shipwreck off the coast of Lampedusa. Coffins were lined up on the port of bodies were brought to shore. The migrant vessel, which was carrying more than 50 people, capsized in bad weather. 21 migrants survived the sinking of the boat, but many are still not accounted for, including 8 children. A Cameroonian survivor recalled the traumatic experience.
Among the survivors, there are only 3 boys, and the others are at the bottom of the sea. I find it hard to talk about. I feel like I'm suffocating, and I do not have the strength to explain things better. There were 2 newborns and 2 minors who fell into the sea and who did not survive. Many women died. We had 12 survivors.
And the European Union top migrant official urged European Union member states on Tuesday to back a temporary plan to quickly get migrants off boats in the Mediterranean Sea and distribute them among countries willing to take them in. Germany, France, Italy and Malta are seeking approval from their European Union partners for a fast-track process to screen migrants, relocate asylum seekers and return people who do not apply for qualify for asylum, all within 4 weeks. Speaking in a joint news conference after European Union interior ministers met to discuss migration challenges, the European Commissioner for Migration, Dimitris Avramopoulos, said that the permanent solution to the migrant crisis is a reformed common European asylum system.
The European Union has said from the very beginning, as far as your point on Syria, that any sustainable solution to the Syrian conflict will not be reached through military means, but requires a genuine political transition. The European Union remains committed to the unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Syrian state. The European Union has urged and continue to urge for the creation of cessation, of hostilities, the protection of civilians, and unhindered, safe, and sustainable humanitarian access throughout all of Syria.
More questions? But what we can do to help and support the member states is make sure that if someone is returned and they are facing trial for alleged crimes, we have mobilized as far as we can collective efforts to find the evidence that might be relevant, including battlefield evidence, to process that evidence so it can be used in prosecutions, and that we've coordinated between different prosecutorial authorities across Europe so that any prosecution stands the best chance of success.
On this Tuesday, European Commission Vice President in charge of European Green Deal, Frans Timmermans, declared they will start to work on tax on polluting foreign firms. Timmermans also referred the transport industry as the most polluting sector of their economy.
With the Green Deal, Europe can lead by example, but we should also be prepared to consider other instruments, for instance, a carbon border tax to level the playing field for European products if other countries do not go as far as us or refuse to go in the right direction.
Like this, we come to the end of News Brief. Remember, you can follow us on our website, TelstarEnglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch the special interviews, and follow our special coverage that we are doing on the situation in Ecuador. So always, continue with us with Telesur, connecting our global thoughts. Until next time, thank you for watching.